Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us for another episode of BlockFi Live. We have an awesome guest with us today. Michael Sonnenshein is the managing director of Grayscale. Michael, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for having me. It's great.
I guess first question before we get into the meaty stuff about Grayscale and y'all's products. How are you doing through quarantine? We're now on like 3 months of recording BlockFi
Yeah,
Live from my bedroom, but hopefully all's well on your end.
I appreciate you asking. Yeah, thankfully, myself, the Grayscale family, everyone's friends and family, everyone's doing well given the circumstances. It has certainly had a material impact on our business, but I have to say, seeing everybody so seamlessly transition to working from home and really not letting things slip through the cracks and continuing to serve investors has been really, really rewarding. And I know certainly when it's permissible, the team is definitely anxious to get back together and be working together in one space.
Yeah, my sense is that your business hasn't slowed down at all during this period, but we'll get into those details a bit more in a minute. First off, just tell us how you originally got into the cryptocurrency space, and what attracted you to the opportunity at Grayscale.
Sure. So I've now been in the space for about 7 years. So I have borrowed this phrase from our founder and CEO, Barry Silbert, who holds himself out to be a recovering investment banker. So I sometimes like to say that I'm a recovering banker as well. So most of my career before working at Grayscale was in the wealth management space, which I thought it actually in hindsight was awesome in terms of preparing me for running an asset management business day to day. And so after spending, a couple years working for large asset managers, I was really looking for an opportunity to do something where I'd have a lot more of an impact on my business, be held accountable to doing good things, be held accountable when I mess things up. And so I knew I wanted to stay in finance, but certainly wanted to go smaller. And I'd heard about Bitcoin. I remember sitting in that bulge bracket investment bank or wealth management office I had. And we'd see Bitcoin come up on CNBC from time to time, but I wasn't necessarily looking for it. And then just through a random series of connections, ended up connecting with our founder and CEO, Barry Silbert. At the time, he was running Second Market. We had started the Bitcoin Trust. So that started in September of 2013. So this is probably early January of 2014. And I interviewed with Barry to do a sales role. I was actually going to probably go work for a hedge fund. And Barry said, Michael, you're rarely going to get the opportunity to join and be able to build something in your career. This is that opportunity. So come help me build something. You won't regret it. And if at any point it doesn't feel like it's going the direction you want, jump off the bandwagon, no hard feelings. And that was about 7 years ago, a little over about 7 years ago. And I haven't looked back once. So that's the not so glamorous story of how I got into crypto.
No, that's awesome, and it's great to see that you're still with it and going strong after 7 years, even with the caveat as Barry was bringing you on board.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, no, it's been a wild ride, and there's certainly been times along the way that could easily test one's faith in devoting their reputation and their career to such an emerging technology, but have just stayed the course, and it's been super rewarding.
that's great. So tell us about Grayscale and your role within Grayscale and the products that y'all currently offer.
Sure. So Grayscale is the world's largest digital currency asset manager. As of last night, we manage about $4 billion. And we do so spread across a family of 10 different investment products. I think Grayscale was early to identify that digital currency was an asset class. Investors wanted access. They might not know where to buy it, how to transfer, how to store, how to safekeep it. But we realized that should not keep them from participating. And so we launched a whole family of investment instruments, each that have a CUSIP, that are audited, that produce financial statements, really not just for investors who don't want to deal with the challenges that I just mentioned, but also for investors that maybe by legal or operational mandate would never be able to hold an asset directly, cryptocurrency or otherwise. And so we have 9 products that each are solely and passively invested in one single digital asset. So a fund for Bitcoin, a fund for Ethereum, a fund for Litecoin, so on and so forth. And then the 10th fund we manage is our digital large cap fund, which is a diversified basket of large cap digital currencies.
And why would someone, there's a lot of different ways to buy cryptocurrency.
Sure.
I can answer this question for myself before I even ask it. But, why would someone leverage a Grayscale product to get exposure to cryptocurrency versus, buying it in maybe the way that a lot of people are most familiar with who are watching this show, which would be like on a cryptocurrency exchange?
Sure. So I think that one of the things that's been super validating, certainly to me and the team, is how well the ecosystem around digital assets, the infrastructure, how well that's all developed over the last 7 years. And it certainly has, to your point, become orders of magnitude easier for investors to access digital currency, which is why it is today the ecosystem that you and I are both so excited about, and building businesses that are thriving. Investors still, though, will want to, and there will be a role for gaining exposure to digital currency through an investment product, the same way that investors leverage products to access other areas of the investor universe, right? So whether it's wanting to access oil or access gold or access healthcare stocks or Chinese equities, the ease and ability to gain exposure to an asset that might otherwise be difficult is something that really resonates with investors of all shapes and sizes. And so at Grayscale, that's really allowed us to not only serve individual investors, but also institutions, like I said, who may not be able to buy and hold crypto directly. Mm-hmm. And I think the other area is really because a lot of investors have a long-term time horizon for their crypto allocation, and many of them want to invest in crypto through a tax-advantaged strategy. And so that may be a 401k or an IRA or a Roth IRA. And while not every investment qualifies to be included in those types of products, certainly as the ecosystem stands today, it's very difficult to find a way to buy Bitcoin in an IRA or Ethereum in an IRA. Yep. But because Grayscale is offering titled securities, that's certainly something we've seen investors participate in order to get exposure in those types of accounts as well.
Yeah, and you just described the exact use case for me for the first time I bought GBTC. It was in a tax-advantaged retirement account in an online brokerage, and I bought GBTC, and haven't looked back. So what do you see driving interest? I mean, I'm sure you're talking to investors all of the time, and this has probably evolved a little bit in your 7 years at Grayscale, but what are some of the key themes in terms of investment theses
Sure.
that folks think of when they think about allocating to some or all of y'all's products?
Well, I think let's first start with one of the things that is frustrating us the most, which I'd love to try and dispel, and hopefully you agree, Zach. There is this notion that somehow, because no matter how far along digital currency, Bitcoin or otherwise has come along, people are still not going out and buying cups of coffee with Bitcoin today. And somehow there's this well-believed narrative that somehow Bitcoin has not fulfilled its ultimate promise, because that is still not, in fact, the case. Do you hear that sometimes too?
All the time. When the first time I went on CNBC, they said, why do people need loans against their cryptocurrency if you can't buy anything with cryptocurrency?
Right.
I said, well, cryptocurrency, the use case for it in the US is not people spending Bitcoin on a cup of coffee. It's an investment asset. Maybe in other markets where payments are more challenging, or there's structural issues with the regional currency, Bitcoin would be more effective for that use case.
Sure.
For investors in the US and most other developed nations, the reality is that this is an investment, not a substitute for whatever currency or mechanism they're using to make payments in their day-to-day lives.
100%. So first, got to put that out there, that is not, in fact, how we measure the success of Bitcoin, right? We look at things like how many wallets there are on the network, what transactional volumes look like. We look at what kind of, legacy financial institutions are participating in the ecosystem, building products and services around it, the human capital shifting into the ecosystem. Those are the kinds of things that keep us really excited about the direction that crypto is headed. I think, though, if you drill into some of the themes that investors are sharing with us, there's definitely a few that I would, highlight for folks listening to this. One is certainly the narrative on Bitcoin being digital gold or a digital store of value. We're certainly proponents of that idea, really recognizing Bitcoin as something that shares a lot of the attributes with gold, but would also certainly be something that has several attributes that may make it, better for a digital world than gold would be, which was probably something better for a physical world. So you're talking about Bitcoin's divisibility, portability, verifiable scarcity. Those are the kinds of things that investors like about Bitcoin that makes it investable. And so I think that narrative has only accelerated in the wake of the COVID pandemic. The increase in economic uncertainty, geopolitical tensions, slowing down of the economy globally, and then seeing how much fiscal stimulus is being pumped into, really the entire financial system globally. Investors are kind of saying, well, can we just print our way out of this? Is that a sustainable solution? And what kinds of investments are out there that can help hedge me from the effects of all that fiscal stimulus? And I think for a lot of them, the verifiable scarcity of certain digital currencies like Bitcoin are the kinds of things that they're excited about. So we've certainly seen an uptick in investment interest and allocations since COVID, and it's been a very busy start to 2020.
Yeah, and there have also been massive tailwinds that all types of digital businesses and kind of digital first companies or products have been riding as a result as well. And it puts Bitcoin squarely in the spotlight when it's like, oh, wow, completely digital, natively digital, natively global, operates 24/7. And then you contrast that with some of the things in the traditional financial services ecosystem, which don't have those same qualities. And then you look at assets like gold, which you touched on, that have performed very well in prior periods of economic volatility and macroeconomic uncertainty.
Mm-hmm.
But
I don't know if it still holds true anymore, right? That's what investors are asking themselves, right? Maybe gold was that at one point. Maybe government-backed, bonds were that at one point. Do those historical norms still hold up in the world we live in today? And, I think, the combination of the factors we're discussing, plus the changing investment behaviors of younger investors who are becoming a much more important portion of the investment community and flows, they're really causing things to be, turned upside down and reconsidered.
Absolutely. And so maybe let's drill into that a little bit more. What kind of data can you share about the split in terms of the types of investors who are using Grayscale products? I mean, I know I've seen some interesting stats before that I think it was Charles Schwab for millennials. GBTC was one of the top 5 assets that are held in Charles Schwab accounts. But when you look at it at a higher level for the firm overall, what do you all see in terms of the split or data points related to who's using your products and what the distribution is between retail and institutional?
Sure. So I would say from a dollars perspective, it's definitely skewing quite a bit more towards institutions. I think what's important to note is that, Grayscale now has 10 different products, all available for daily subscriptions. The caveat being that in order to subscribe to the private placements, you have to be an accredited investor as an individual or as an institution, in which case we're transacting with these investors either by subscribing cash, USD, or in some instances, we already encounter investors who already own digital currency and want to subscribe into the private placements using the digital currency that they already own. What's been really innovative, though, despite serving high net worth investors, family offices, hedge funds, other types of institutions through our private placements, is that several of our products are now publicly quoted on the stock market. And so we've definitely seen investors of all shapes and sizes, whether they are accredited or they're not accredited investors, accessing these products on the public market side, right through any type of investment account that they have, retirement or not, provided it gives them exposure to the US securities market. So it's really a broad swatch of investors that Grayscale is able to serve, and the hope is that we'll continue to build out the product suite as we're identifying other assets or other areas of the market that investors want exposure to.
And have you seen any shifts? I mean, I'm sure you have, being at this for 7 years. Maybe just talk about some of the points of evolution, either thematically or in terms of the the size or type of investor that y'all are seeing express interest or investing with
Sure.
today versus
Yeah,
years ago.
I'd say earliest on, we were really dealing with probably 2014, 2015. A lot of folks in Silicon Valley, a lot of kind of family offices, folks who are really thinking about digital currency. It was maybe coming up in social gatherings, interactions. It was still pretty unknown at the time. And I think the major run-up in digital currency prices in 2017 really put it on the radar of a much broader group of investors. And I'd say since 2017, we saw a subsequent kind of crypto winter. Prices fell quite precipitously. Prices stayed relatively stagnant for quite some time afterwards. What we started to see happening was kind of those that were really in digital currency for a quick trade emerge versus those who were really in it for the long term. Mm-hmm. And, for us, I think it's been super validating to see that investors are really more than ever skewing towards having that medium to longer term time horizon for investing in the space and affording, can afford to be patient while digital currencies play out and the ecosystem develops. So I would say now we're hearing that from investors. They understand the thesis. We're having to do far less education with investors. Many of them are coming to us having done their homework. If as an individual, as an institution, they usually have tasked one or some group of individuals with staying on top of developments in the ecosystem. And sometimes that's because they're excited about the technology underpinning digital currencies, looking at blockchain. Sometimes it's because they see digital currencies affecting some of the other investments that they have. Certainly that digital gold narrative is in there. But I think whereas once we were often having to defend digital currency and why it has a role in the world, we were having to defend the fact that digital currency wasn't meant for nefarious purposes or doing illegal things. None of those kinds of things are coming up in conversation anymore with investors. And so that's been super rewarding to see how that's evolved over time. And so I think today, the conversation's much more drill into kind of what's the outlook, what are the milestones, what are the signs to be looking for, and then of course, how this may fit within portfolio construction.
Yep. And what about from a diversification across assets perspective? Maybe touch briefly on, I assume Bitcoin is by far the largest Grayscale product, GBTC, relative to others, just like if you look at the cryptocurrency market cap, but maybe
Sure.
talk a bit just about, what that distribution looks like for you.
Yeah, so we do have 10 products, and the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust is certainly the largest of them. But I'd also say it's not a fair apples to apples comparison because these products were all launched at different times throughout Grayscale's history. But I'd say, most investors are making at least their initial allocations to the Grayscale product family, probably most often centered around Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. The reason for that anecdotally is probably because that's where they've done the most homework. That's probably because they've done the most research on the space around Bitcoin. And I think more than anything, investors have probably just seen that, Bitcoin has a lot of staying power. It's been called dead no shorter than probably 100 times.
At least.
And it's amazing, right? And so it's still managed to thrive and grow from there. Outside of that, I would say that some interesting data that we're monitoring pretty closely, which is how investors are diversifying within digital currencies. Mm-hmm. So again, because we have 10 products, we're able to obviously see which other products investors are also allocating to. And as of the end of Q1 of 2020, almost 40% of our investors had allocated to more than one product, meaning that they had allocated to more than one digital currency. So I do think that narrative is definitely resonating with folks, that digital currency provides diversification benefits, but actually there's even further benefits when you diversify within the digital currencies themselves.
That's great. And what about forthcoming initiatives? Are there any new products that you're able to talk about that y'all are working on, or other things that might be coming down the pipeline for Grayscale that you could share a little bit of insight into?
Yeah, so one, our team, for as long as I can remember, we maintain a list of 20 to 30 products that we are exploring or thinking about bringing to market. And again, it's a difficult line for us to always figure out how to balance. What are investors telling us? What areas or what assets do they want to be able to get exposed to? Versus where are we sometimes seeing interesting opportunities and we should be bringing them to investors. Mm-hmm. So nothing that I can share just yet, but I would definitely be happy to say the Grayscale product family will not be stopping at just 10 products. It will grow from here. And I'd say, we're just continuing to invest in the team, invest in technology, invest in our brand. Really exciting time for the team as we're experiencing a lot of this growth.
That's awesome. And what's the best way for folks to learn more if they're interested in learning more? Where can they find you on the web or social media, or how can they get in touch if they want?
So please visit us at grayscale.co. So it's .co. When you're on the Grayscale website, we have an insights section that's has tons of great research that's we've authored. We have primers on single digital currencies. We have papers about portfolio construction. Certainly stay up to date with the team on Twitter. Our handle is Grayscale Invest. If you care about any of the things I ever have to say, you can follow me. It's just my last name at Sonnenshein. And certainly if there's any way anyone on my team, myself, we can be helpful, we certainly will do so. So please don't hesitate to reach out.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining us, Michael, and thanks for all the work that you and the team at Grayscale do. You're an incredibly impactful part of the cryptocurrency ecosystem, and we're excited to keep seeing what y'all come up with and following along, either from the sidelines or for me personally from my brokerage account where I'm in GBTC.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Zach. This is great.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.